Welcome to Wayne's World, rising above the noise and confusion.
It's Wayne's Word.
Oh.
Welcome, Scott. This is my very good friend, Scott Riopelle. Thank you for coming on to the Wayne's Word podcast today. Scott is the founder and former CEO of Interstate Roofing, which was one of the 10 largest roofing companies in the country, I believe, or right up there, was it not?
Yeah, top 20 in the
top
country.
10, 20, something like that. Okay. So Scott and I have a lot in common. We both spent time at the Englewood Federal Correctional Center in Englewood, Colorado. We've both spent some time there. I was there visiting a good friend of mine a long time ago who was in prison on a gun charge. And so I visited him there a number of times. So I know the inside of that prison, and so does Scott. So Scott is one of the most successful businessmen in Colorado. And his story is incredibly inspiring because he has spent time behind bars, and he's had a hard life, and he grew up on the streets of Detroit. But yet he founded this company that became one of the major roofing companies in the world and has been very successful at that. Scott, tell me a little bit about how your life started out in Detroit.
Well, I started out in a little suburb outside of Detroit called Taylor, Michigan. Between Taylor, Westland, and Canton, Michigan, them three little towns. It's called downriver of Detroit. So it was still Wayne County, which is the county that Detroit's in, but we were in suburbs. Lower middle class. My mother was a janitor at General Motors. She worked on the assembly line, and she had me at a young age. She was 15. So I grew up living with my grandparents, and, I was an out-of-control kid. Ran the streets, and, when I was young, I ended up, with an anger, temper, ADD, ADHD, everything they diagnose you with now, they didn't really diagnose you with then. I got put in some facilities to help me. My mom was a young mother. She didn't know what to do, and tried to probably get help, and I got in trouble at school, and they finally locked me up. I was in and out of boys' facilities my whole childhood. I think it started around 9 or 10.
So 9 or 10, you've already been to juvie hall at that point.
Yes.
Okay. And you're living with your grandparents at this time, or with family?
Yeah, between my grandparents and my mother. My mother had got married to my stepdad, who was an alcoholic.
Okay.
And, I was the stepson, and I was out of control. And he really didn't know it. Nobody knew what to do with me.
And you basically have the run of the streets of Detroit, metropolitan Detroit, to go do what you wish to do at that age.
Yeah, I was doing a lot of things I probably shouldn't have been doing.
Right.
I have a daughter at home that's 10, and I feel like, wow, at her age, I was, taken away from my parents, and I was doing things that I wouldn't even dare tell them I was doing.
Well, and there are a lot of people who grow up this way. Particularly these days, who really don't have a stable home life, and so I'm sure a lot of people can relate to what your life was like at that time. Where did this culminate? So you're in the system at age 10. Where does that lead to later in your teenage years, early 20s?
I mean, it followed me, my whole life, because from there I met kids. I mean, most of the kids I grew up with now have moved on to the next world, right? They've passed away. All the tough kids, all the cool kids I knew are either dead or in prison. There's a few of us left. And, the reason why I feel like I'm left is because, I found sobriety. I found a higher power. I found God. I'm not super religious.
Right.
I believe in God, and, my kids go to Catholic school, and God is a part of my life and sobriety, but I feel my 22 years of sobriety that I have is why I'm sitting here today, right? Because I couldn't have kept on going the route I was going. And when I was young, you made a lot of bad decisions, fighting and guns and knives, and and just drugs and crack cocaine. You know, I grew up in Detroit in the 90s, you know, and late 80s and 90s, and crack cocaine was a thing.
And if you're growing up on the streets of Detroit in the 1990s, staying out of trouble would be an enormous effort, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, it just
everything's
wasn't,
trying to draw you in.
I had no home life. It was broken. I had really nothing going for me.
Did you graduate high school? Did you finish?
Sort of. I got my GED and I graduated from adult education. My mother worked at General Motors in Ypsilanti, Michigan, and they were doing a special. They put these double wide trailers at the factory, and they wanted to educate their factory workers and their family. So I ended up going to school in a trailer at the GM factory with my mother. So they basically me and her went to school together to get our GEDs and our diplomas together.
Wow.
So me and my mom got to graduate together.
Okay.
I think I was about 21 or 20. And, I made a lot of good drug connections there, right? Because everybody working at the factories had the best drugs.
Sure.
So my mom was dragging me to school, in the trailer. So she got paid to go to school, and she got to take me, and I got my diploma. She knew how important it was. And it really wasn't important to me. I just went because I got free drugs from all the factory workers.
And then where did that lead to? So tell me about your early 20s. Now you've gotten your GED with your mom, but you're still into the drug scene and the streets.
Yeah, and I'm in and out of, jail. I'm in and out of halfway drug rehabs. I had a pretty bad drug problem. I was the kid that hung out with everybody that nobody really wanted to hang with.
Really?
Because I was a bad addict. And, I started to find AA and Cocaine Anonymous and Alcoholics Anonymous. And I started finding, that there was a better way of life. But I wasn't convinced of that yet. And, I went to some religious programs. I guess, I was thinking about that on the way up here or down here. I was at a place called Teen Challenge.
Right. I'm familiar with it.
I was I was getting ready to get sentenced by the judge, and my mom come walking into the courtroom. Your Honor, this boy needs Jesus in his life. They were probably going to put me in jail for, 6 months or a year or so. I don't know what they were going to do, and the judge goes, "Oh, yeah, well, tell me a little more about this." And my mother, who was a born-again Christian at that time, said, "This kid, he needs Jesus in his life. He needs to find Jesus and change his lifestyle and his friends. And jail's just going to make him worse." And the judge goes, "I think I have just a place for him." And they say he sentenced me to 6 months to Teen Challenge. So I had to go to Bible school.
How was that?
It was in the heart of Detroit, in the straight ghetto.
Yeah.
And, it was kind of a blur to me. But it was just going through the motions, right?
Sure.
And
you were staying out of jail, right?
Yeah, I was doing whatever I could not to go to jail.
Yeah.
It was Teen Challenge was much better than jail.
Mm-hmm.
Food was better.
Did it help you somewhat? Or did you come out and just get back in trouble again?
I just got out and got back in trouble, but what I think it did was it kept me clean enough long enough to realize that there could be a better way. So maybe I wasn't ready at the moment, but I think that I stayed sober long enough to realize, maybe there is a better way out there. Maybe I could change my life.
And you're still in Detroit at this point. What kind of jobs are you working when you're working?
Just restaurant jobs, construction jobs, whatever. I'd only last a month or two wherever I worked, and I was constantly getting fired.
Sure.
So it just, any random odd sales job I could get, any random odd restaurant, whatever I could get.
So this kind of went on into your early 20s, I'm guessing.
Yeah. So when I was 22, I went, and this is what I caught my felony for in Detroit, is when I was 22, I went on a crack cocaine spree. I was strung out on drugs. I was staying at my aunt and uncle's house. They went out of town. I ran out of money, and I felt like their TV and a few other things that I could trade for drugs and I could get back. And
Before they get back.
Yeah, and that's not really what happened, right?
This is almost like Risky Business, the movie, right?
So I sold their TV for crack cocaine, and when they got home, they weren't happy about it, and reported the insurance. The insurance prosecuted me, pressed charges against me, and
whether your relatives wanted that or not, once it's reported, it's going to get.
Yep, and I got a felony for it.
Okay,
and and I really don't know what was taken because I wasn't really in my right mind. So maybe I sold a few things, and maybe a few things were stolen. It's kind of unclear.
Mm-hmm.
It was.
It's all kind of a fog to you.
Yeah, 30 something years ago, right?
Yeah. And you're on drugs at the time, I would imagine.
Yep, correct. And I pleaded to a felony, and I didn't really know what I was doing at the time. Right? I didn't really have no one to direct me. I just knew I didn't want to live this life anymore. And the judge was like, if you plead guilty to the felony, we'll not put you in jail. I'm like, whatever I got to do not to go to jail, fine. And I didn't really realize the effects that it would have on me later on in life.
I think a lot of people enter into felony plea deals not realizing that this this sticks with you for the rest of your life, and it affects things you can do. So tell me how that went. Did you go to prison on the felony then?
No, not that time. I didn't do anything. I was like, nothing really happened. That's why I didn't understand it.
Yeah, it was something you pleaded to, and then you moved on with your life.
I moved on with my life. I got sober. I found AA. I changed my life. I moved out west. I had a good friend of mine that moved to Santa Fe, New Mexico. And me and another friend, he talked us into moving out there and coming to work at a bar with us. I was a few years sober, and I was, working at a bar. I was working at a steel mill, and I'm like, this is a miserable life. I got to change. Like,
what was miserable about it? I mean, sounds like I was out partying, doing drugs, drinking.
No, I was sober.
Oh, you were sober at this point, right? Yeah,
but there was no opportunity for me, right? Like the best shot at life I had was working in a factory, working 40 hours a week on an assembly line.
And I think there are a lot of people right now that age who feel really trapped in jobs, and they've checked all the boxes, they've done everything right. Maybe they've gone to school or to trade school or 4-year college, whatever it may be, and they're out there working hard, they're doing everything, and they just cannot get ahead. They nothing works for them. I'm seeing this among young adults all over Colorado.
I lived in a house with 3 other guys. We rented rooms, and I just wasn't going to go anywhere in life.
Right.
And so I decided to go out to Santa Fe, New Mexico, moved out there. It just wasn't my thing. I had a friend in the roofing business in Colorado, and I didn't quite understand what he was doing in the roofing business. And I came to Denver to live with him. Slept on an air mattress in a studio apartment, right, with 3 guys. And I started knocking doors for his roofing company, canvassing leads for him to sell roofs for a hailstorm. I had no idea what hail was because being from Detroit, hail is, an ice that object that comes out of the sky that damages the roofs.
Not something you see very often in the upper Midwest.
Right. And so there was a big ice storm, hailstorm here in Colorado. So I started knocking doors, and I was really good at it. I was really good at selling. I had a lot of, sales jobs through my life. I was, doing really good. And within, and I was sober. And
you're basically living, in his house. In your friend's house and selling jobs for him.
I was just not even selling jobs. I was finding the jobs for him to sell.
Sure. Okay.
And, next thing, then I learned how to sell jobs. I signed my first contract. I'll never forget the guy's name. It was John Bucks, and it was in Wash Park. I didn't know how to fill out the contract. I wasn't very good at reading or writing. And he's like, give me the contract. And he took the contract, and he filled it out himself. He filled out his name, his address, So from that point on, I realized, wow, I can sell roofs, and I don't need to really read or write or spell that. I can just send it over to the homeowner, slide it across the table, and they'll fill it out themselves. So from that point on, I signed thousands of roofing contracts that way. And, it was before cell phones and before computers and before a lot of this. So he filled out that contract. It was like a $10,000 roof. This is 30 years ago. I made $400 or $500, and I was like, wow, this is more money than I've ever made legally. I made it in an hour.
Wow.
So I started selling roofs.
A lot better than working on a factory floor, right?
Yeah, I wasn't making that for a week.
Yeah.
And so I started, and then I realized like how much money was in this industry. And from that day on, I just started working, 14, 16 hour a day, going to AA and working. That was my life for years and years and years. And a couple years in, I pulled up to the office, and the owner had a new truck and a brand new motorcycle.
Mm-hmm.
And I was expecting this paycheck, and he goes, "Oh, sorry, man. I'm going to have to pay you Monday." And I'm like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, I had some things come up." I didn't say anything, but I seen the brand new motorcycle and the brand new truck.
Right.
And here I don't have money to pay rent or live anywhere. I'm driving a car that barely runs. And, I'm excited. I was probably going to get a couple $1,000 check, and I didn't get it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had an AA sponsor, Wally Webb, bless his heart. He's like, "Hey, kid, let's start our own roofing business." I'm like, "Huh? I don't know anything about business." He goes, "You don't need to. We can hire everybody." And from that, and then he taught me that I needed to get the people to do what I can't do. Look, you're good at selling, and you're good at relationships. You're not good at any of this other stuff, so let's hire it all out. So we hired all the positions out, and I started a roofing company.
Just with your sales skills and your relationship skills, your ability to knock on a door cold. Yep. What is that like when you first start? You walk up to somebody and
I had no idea. I mean, I've been squirt with water hoses. I've had my door, shut on me. Your foot slammed in the door. I mean, a lot. It's not a great, but it beats the alternative. Knocking on doors and, being hungry and making, look, there wasn't nobody going to give me anything.
Mm-hmm.
I had to go out and get it. I had to go out and earn it. I had to make my own way.
You had this felony record, you had your past and a GED, and this was a way to get from point A to point B, and you didn't really have any choice in the matter either, did you?
No. So a few years, I had a business. I was doing a ton of roofs. I don't really know how many at the time, but I was making a lot of money. And, I thought there for a minute that, you know what, I'm cured. I can drink again. I was at an AA poker game, and on the TV, I'll never forget it, a Zima commercial came out, this Zima beer. I'm like, I've never had that. I'm going to go try it. I left that room with all them people in AA, and I went and bought the Zima beer, and I never even drank it.
This is like fizzled water, right?
Yes,
with some alcohol.
I never even drank it. I got a bottle of Jack Daniels. I slugged that. Next thing you know, I'm doing crack cocaine and cocaine.
You're right back there.
I just immediately.
How long did it take?
Probably about 60 days, and
Okay.
I lost everything I'd built in 60 days. And Wally, the old timers, got me sober at York Street down in Denver. They got me on their couch, apartment building next door, and they kind of stood over me with baseball bats and wouldn't let me leave their house.
Really? Who is this?
They're passed away now. His name was Wally Webb, and there was Bob.
People, and they cared about
you.
Yeah,
there was a few other old timers. Bob was there, and Wally, and some really good old time AA people, right, from Skid Row.
Mm-hmm.
And they sobered me up. They got me through the DTs and the shakes, and I started back in them. And then I went to Arizona, where I met my current partner now. I'll get into that, Bob Schober. And, I went out to rehab in Phoenix for 60 days. I met some good people in sobriety out there. I came back to Denver, and that was about 23 years ago.
Okay.
Kept my company, and I got it back on track.
You were past the drugs, the alcohol.
Yep.
You weren't stumbling anymore back into that stuff.
Right.
And you're building a business.
So I was about 5 years sober. So this was in 2004, so 20 years ago. July 24th, I was leaving an AA meeting with my kid I was sponsoring, Brandon Gordon, bless his heart, and some other. We left an AA meeting, and we got hit by a drunk driver leaving an AA meeting. It killed him, and it put me in a coma for 10 weeks and broke my back. I was never to walk again. I was in the hospital for 10 weeks.
They were telling you that you'll never walk
Well,
again.
I was in a coma.
Yeah.
So
that's what they were telling people.
And when I woke up, I was doing like 70 to 80 roofs a week, and my whole company pulled together and kept me in business. And
while you're in a coma, you've built something that they can sustain.
Yes.
Okay.
So it was phenomenal. It was just really like incredible what had happened. All my AA sponsors, all my friends in sobriety, a lot of people who are in business now, who own their own businesses, God bless them, they all pulled together to help me sustain. I got out, and and then I made some bad choices when I got out of prison. I started.
Now wait a minute. Which prison stint is this? This is
the federal prison. So
right,
I guess
this is
that.
So you've gone back into business. Everything's going great.
So first, what happened is the accident. So then I started making bad choices, and that's how I ended up in prison. Right. So I started going to the strip club. I was like the new athlete that signed that new contract. I had all this money from roofing, and I'm like, wow, this is more money than I'd ever seen in my life. And I bought a Cadillac, and I bought all these guns, and I bought, which I wasn't supposed to have because I was a felon when I was younger, which I didn't know I couldn't have these guns.
Again, this was a piece of paper you signed. You didn't do any time for it way back when. You weren't, you had moved on. You weren't really thinking about what you had done when you copped that plea.
Correct. So, but I was guilty. So I had these guns, and I was hanging out with people that with in the strip club at different strip clubs with girls that are making bad choices too. And one of my friends, I didn't know it at the time. A guy that I was gambling with, playing poker with, hanging out at the strip club with, he got caught robbing a bank. Had no idea he was doing it. He got caught, and then the next thing you know, a few days later, the DEA or FBI came to my house, raided my house, and I had guns, which I shouldn't have because we were associates. We were all together, and even though I didn't know anything about the bank robbery, I had guns. I wasn't supposed to. I went to prison.
Right. For the guns. You hadn't gone back onto a drug bender or anything like that.
I was I was 5 years sober.
Right.
And I'm sitting in prison, and I'm like, wow, this is really fucked up. Like
this is our prison. This is the Inglewood Correctional Facility.
Yes, the FDC.
We have both been on the inside.
And I'm in there, and I go to a bail hearing. My attorneys Harvey Steinberg and Steve Alonzi, and I go to federal prison. They put me in the van. They drive me to the court, and I go in front of this judge. I'm in prison, and I just can't believe they're not giving me bail. Like, this is just beside me that they're not letting me. I'm running a business. I'm doing millions of dollars in roofs.
You have a whole bunch of employees,
and they're not. And they're making me out to be John Gotti, and some gangster from Detroit, which I'm not. I'm just I'm just a normal.
You're not even given bond.
But bond was denied. But I was like this athlete that made all this new money, right? Mm-hmm. So it appeared that I wasn't really making this money from roofing. It was a front. And so then I got denied bail. I acted up in prison. Next thing you know, I'm in jail, and I go into they put me in solitary confinement. because there was stuff being brought into prison from the camp, and they thought I was involved. So while they were doing their investigation, they put me into solitary. They put us all into solitary confinement. And I'll never forget walking into that jail cell inside Inglewood prison, 100-year-old prison. I mean, just everything you imagine that you see on TV is what it was.
It's a horrible place.
And I walk in there, and the whole jail cell is painted except for one little spot where it says, "I, Timothy McVeigh, was sentenced to death today."
And you're reading this on the wall in the cell that you are now in.
And I'm like, I'm fucked. My life is over.
You're in the same cell as Timothy McVeigh, the guy who blew up the Oklahoma City building, killed all sorts of innocent women and children. I mean, this is as hardcore a criminal as you ever see among humanity.
And I have no clue. And that's when I realized the severity of what is going on. And I'm like, wow, God, if you get me out of this, and I know everybody says this, and at that moment, I said, you know what? I dropped to my knees and I said, listen, I take responsibility for what I did. I'm not a victim. Because up until that moment, I was a victim. I was innocently accused. I shouldn't be in prison. And I'm like,
I didn't know the felony thing and the guns and all of this stuff.
And they were right. I should have known. I should have known what I did. I should have took a little more serious. And I could have had that felony expunged up until then, but I didn't. I didn't know. And, look, man, I messed up, and I'm trying to negotiate with God. And I know a lot of people do this when they mess up. And, for some reason, it was fit that I got 3 years in federal prison instead of 20. And
did you do all three?
I did 36 I did almost all three.
Almost all 3 years.
And, I ran my company ran while I was in prison.
But you didn't run it, did you?
Nope. I had other people running it.
Okay.
And then we had shut it down, and I owed a bunch of the shingle manufacturers a few $100,000, and I paid them from the prison cell, right? I closed the company down while I was in prison. I paid everybody. So when I got out of prison...
How do you do that? You make a phone call to a secretary?
My CPA helped me close it all down and make sure everybody got paid.
That was important to you, even though you're sitting there behind bars. And
maybe going to do 20 years, but it was important to me to pay the people that I owed the money to.
Why? Why? If you're going to be in the clink for 20 years maybe, or 10 or 15.
Because that's the right thing to do. They gave me the material. They were owed the money. Right? Why should I keep that money when I owed it to them?
And you had already talked to God about not being a victim.
Right. And I needed to, and that was like the first step of changing my life. And okay, I need to pull this together. And so I did. I paid all the manufacturers, and then I ended up closing everything down. And then I got sentenced to my 3 years. So I was in the FDC here for like 10 months. And what the federal prison system does is it ships you close to your home. So they shipped me to Milan, Michigan. That's where my family is. So I took Conair to Oklahoma City. So here I am in Oklahoma City.
Right.
where
Tim McVeigh got it, his fame.
Where he got it. And
notoriety.
And it just, like, all this stuff kept hitting me, right? And then I ended up in Milan, Michigan. And I'm like, okay, I got 2 years. I just got to keep it together, and I got to better my life. So I bettered my life. I learned how to type. I read books. I stayed, I really like got in good shape. And I said, I'm going to change my life. And I did. I'm going to take accountability and responsibility for what I did. I'm going to get out of prison, and I'm going to go back to selling roofs, which I did. And I'm going to change my trajectory. I'm gonna do everything different.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did my 2 years. They put me in a halfway house back here in Colorado. I had an ankle bracelet on, and I met my ex-wife there. She was in the federal halfway house. We met at the federal halfway house. She was a victim. She was in Columbine. She was a sophomore in Columbine when that happened. when the Columbine massacre happened.
Right. I was there on the aftermath of that, visiting with students.
She was a sophomore there, but she was in federal prison for allegedly selling drugs, and I was in prison for allegedly selling guns, even though I never sold a gun.
Right.
And, it's kind of the Bonnie and Clyde story, right? We met, we fell in love, we had 3 kids, got married, and, I built I built back Interstate Roofing.
What's that like? You get out of prison and you're trying to put together a company.
What happened is I owned another company called R&R Plus, and the owner of Interstate Roofing was my competitor before I went to prison. He met me at 7-Eleven across the street from the halfway house I was in, and he said, "Hey, Scott, I don't really want to compete against you. I know how good you are. The economy just crashed. I lost a lot of money in real estate. I want you to be my partner. I want to merge our companies together." And at that time, I knew I needed him because the BBB wasn't letting me be registered because I was a felon, and I couldn't get I was having a hard time getting my licensing because my insurance because of my felonies and this and that.
Because of all this stuff that goes back to your childhood on the streets of Detroit.
Correct. So we made a deal that I was going to be his partner, that we were going to merge our companies together, and we were going to run under Interstate Roofing. And because that way because all my cases were on, you could Google my name, and it was horrible, the things that people said about me. Some are true, some aren't.
Well, your competitors, I would imagine, it's a very cutthroat business.
Yes, very cutthroat.
I would imagine they're just going to pummel you with that.
And they were putting my mugshot, printing pictures of my mugshot and putting them on all my homeowners' doors where I was roofing. I mean, it was a pretty gnarly part of my life. Like I didn't just have to build a business. I had to build a business being a felon and being judged.
With this enormous headwind at you.
Yeah, it was, looking back, it's kind of a miracle that I made it, just because I had to overcome every obstacle. And it wasn't easy.
And this is several times now getting back up on your feet.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I wish life was glamorous and, like my success was this great ride, but, there was a lot of ramen noodles ate and not the good ramen that you pay $50 for now. I'm talking the 10-cent ramen noodles.
It's almost free food when you're in college or whatever. You thank God for ramen.
Well, the only thing I ever did at college was party.
Right.
I don't really know what college looks like. I know it.
I think I forgot half of it as well. It's probably a good thing.
Yeah. So, I got out. He gave me, and he goes, "Look, I'll sell you Interstate Roofing, get me out of debt." I was the only one that didn't know that the economy crashed in 2008. And I went out and I started knocking doors, and I built a massive sales force. The real estate market crashed. I hired a lot of real estate agents. I hired a lot of good talent. A lot of good friends came from that time in my life. And, I worked 16, 18 hours a day for many years straight without a day off.
Still going door to door, I would imagine.
Door to door.
Yeah.
And across, not just in Denver, but across the country.
And getting doors slammed in your face all along.
Yeah.
I would imagine that happens to this day if you go door to door.
Yeah, still
correct?
does.
Yeah.
Right? Still does to this day. And, I was able to build the brand Interstate Roofing.
You had told me once you were chasing a storm in Kansas City.
Yeah.
As I recall from our past conversation, that's when you realized that you were actually doing pretty well. You had gone to stay at a budget host hotel or something like that.
Yeah, that's funny. I was, we stayed at, oftentimes when we chase storms, we stayed in the cheapest hotels we could. And, I just continued to do that. And I went to turn all my receipts in because it wasn't computerized at the time. And I sat down with my CPA, and she was looking at the budget host inn or something. She looked at me, she said, "Scott, you're a millionaire, right? Why are you staying in a $20 a night hotel?"
And you didn't know that, did you?
I had no idea. I had no idea. All I knew is that, I was better than I used to be.
But at this point, she's doing the books, and she sees that you're worth millions of dollars at that point.
And I had no idea.
And you're staying at the budget host. So
yes.
Did you continue staying at the budget host, or did she convince you to move up the chain a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I still stay at Marriott, a lower end Marriott. I don't I don't overdo it. I think it's important to not wastefully spend money.
Mm-hmm.
It's
not how you got to where you are.
Right. So I still am reasonable of where I stay. I don't stay in the most expensive, but I definitely don't stay in cockroach-infested hotels anymore.
Right. Yeah.
Like I used to.
You got your limits. Huh?
Yeah.
So it sounds to me like, character, personality, intelligence, will, determination, really, but roofing brought you through this. I mean, because you could sell. I think a lot of people are in, they may get a 4-year degree and then go get a Juris Doctor in law or whatever it may be, and their careers are still kind of a bust, or they're working a lot harder than anything they're realizing in return.
You need to have what kids call today a side hustle, right? But it's not a hustle. You have to have something. If you're working a job that you know is not going to go anywhere, it's okay. But you also have to, instead of going out and partying, instead of educate yourself on another business plan, right? And you don't have to be a business owner. We have developed a program within our company where you can have a company inside our company and you can make more money as an independent contractor than you can as an owner, right? Like I pay myself less than most people that work for me make because it's important. And everybody, today's youth, you have to educate yourself, and you're not going to get rich off of Amazon. You're not going to get rich off of reselling and maybe you are. Maybe you're the lucky one. But whatever you're going to do on side of your normal 9-to-5 job, if that's what you have, do another job after your original job. But educate yourself on it. Whatever it's going to be, whatever you're going to do, if you're going to go to school to get a better career, always be bettering yourself. If that means going to school after your job, if that means researching and reading books on how to do or work in another field that makes more money, or how to invest your money, right? Because you don't always have to make the most money to be in a position I'm in life. You just have to do what's right with your money, right? Don't go out, don't go blow it. Be frugal, but not cheap. And just understand that like saving is a real thing, right? And investing is a real thing. And don't get caught up with investing. If something sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Or if you don't understand it.
Make sure you are a master of whatever you're going to do before you do it with your money.
You made it big in roofing. You're good at it. You know what you're doing. I can't imagine you woke up one day as a child and said, I want to be a roofer. No, I mean, that's not the kind of thing where you're following your passion to go be a roofer.
No,
you're following your talent.
The day I walked up and my paycheck wasn't good and there was a new motorcycle and a new truck in front of the office from the guy I was working for, that's when I knew I need to understand this business because there's a lot of money in this business. And if I do it the right way, I can not only make a lot of money, I can make everybody around me a lot of money, and I can do it the right way.
That was a powerful motivator, wasn't it? Having this person not make payroll but splurging money on himself.
It changed me, yes. It was a very big motivator.
Now, you could have gone home and said, oh, I'm the victim of this guy who went out and bought himself a new truck and a new Harley, and he can't make payroll, and I've got to wait now.
And I'm going to go back and work and I'm going to go work back at Subway because I used to work at Subway.
And why does shit always happen to me? Yeah.
Right.
Why do I have to work at Subway now? But what do you tell someone who's sort of mired in that sort of stewing in self-pity because bad things are happening to me every single day?
Do whatever you can not to feel sorry for yourself. Change your mindset. I didn't automatically just learn how to be this great business person. I didn't realize I don't want to be the only new truck in the parking lot. I want everybody that's on my side to have a new truck. I want everybody with me to make good money, right? So how do I do that? And I figured out a recipe, and I figured out a way to do that with commission splits, with partnerships. So a lot of, my sales reps and my roofers and And everybody I work with, they're all my partners. We're in this together.
Sounds like you don't really compete. I mean, there are some competitors out there who beat you up for your past.
Yeah.
And there are fly-by nights and everything. But it sounds like some of the better, more reputable roofing companies are more interested in working together than they are with,
So that's what happened is that I had a private equity groups, came into our roofing space a few years ago. And they purchased a guy that used to work for me that I met in Phoenix when I went to rehab, Bob. They bought his company, Pro West in Phoenix. And then they realized, okay, well, we're going to go buy you, Scott. Then they bought my company. And then they bought another company, Danny Boy Roofing in Chicago, who used to work for me. And probably we would have, all three of us would have stayed partners if we would have understood business and understood life and understood. But, a lot of us didn't. We were young. I can break a little anonymity. We're all recovering from past, addictions. Mm-hmm. And we all, we all have grown up now. So we're all mature enough now to understand that we're better together than apart. And so we've all joined a private equity group. We're backed by a private equity group, Peterson Partners. And, now last year we did close to $200 million in roofs.
Wow.
And, we're friends, and like they brought the band back together. And, that's something I never thought was possible. Right, because of our egos and our pride, but the truth is that we've worked it out, and we're good at it, and roofing is what we're good at, and we've made that our life goal to be the best there is.
I mean, it sounds like a really good field for almost anyone to go in if they have something to offer in that field, whether it be construction skills or sales skills or whatever it may be.
Yeah, so we give back, right? So we're a second chance company. We let a lot of people with hardened past, that are doing the right thing, that we make sure they're sober. We make sure that they're in recovery. We make sure that they're not living in the dark world anymore. We have checks and balances because, we don't want these people that are going to rip homeowners off or we got to have people that we trust working for us. So just because you're a recovering drug addict or a past felon doesn't mean you're a bad person. It means you've made bad choices, but doesn't mean that you can't make better choices today and be a different person.
And I have another friend who employs people, and he goes out of his way sort of to employ people who run into the obstacles of their past.
Oh, 100%.
You do that.
Oh, 100%.
Do you find that sometimes those are the best employees? I mean, I would imagine it goes both ways.
So we don't really look at people as our employees. We look at the people that work with us as our partners, right? We're all partners because, in today's society, in today's world, it's not a dictatorship. It's if we all have a piece that we have to do, we all have a job to do. And if we don't all do our job, the company won't run. So instead of one person being the owner, it's really not that way in our industry. It's more of a partnership. We're more partners with all our sales reps, with all our direct sellers, with all our roofers. They all have their own companies, and they all work inside our company.
Okay.
So, we all work side by side and together.
And what do you find among people who have, and there are a lot more out there than I think people realize, people who have grown up in difficult circumstances, unstable circumstances, fallen out of line with the law when they were way too young to realize what they were doing and what the ramifications would be long term. What do you say to people like that who feel stuck, that maybe they've had a rough past and they've now they're trying to play it straight, but nothing's working for them? I think that's a lot of young people today.
Have you ever got a speeding ticket?
Yes.
Have you ever ran a stop sign and not got a ticket for it?
Yes.
I think everybody has broken the law. whether they want to admit it or not. It's just everybody hasn't been caught.
There's an old book out there called 4 Felonies a Day that insists that everyone pretty much commits about 4 felonies a day. I don't know if that's true.
I
That's the
don't
book,
know.
but yeah.
I know that everybody has broke the law.
Sure, absolutely.
And not everybody's been caught. And, are you lucky or smart that you didn't get caught? I don't know. I got caught. I did the crime. I paid the time, and now I've changed my life. And, that's why I'm working towards changing my life. I'm working towards, I'd like to get, I'd like to get a pardon. I'd like to see, to move forward and see if President Trump would forgive my felonies, right?
Well, let's talk about another case a bit similar to yours, although I think it's a little more extraordinary of a breaking of the law, and that is the former president's son, Hunter Biden, was recently pardoned of, I think, 3 gun felonies. This person was gloating about his drug abuse and his active current drug abuse at the time when he was buying guns. He was putting that into a book, and he was convicted.
Well, when I was in federal prison, I realized the effect of crack cocaine and guns. People were in prison doing hundreds of years of prison time because they had crack cocaine and a gun. And there was a thing called enhancements. And there's a scale, there's a metric scale of like the years and months that you do in prison for like your past crimes and the severity of your crime and what they consider a severe crime. And even though like the way that what I did at my uncle's house, they considered that a home invasion, right? Even I had no idea, but that was a violent felony, which of course it wasn't.
No,
but
because you were already in the home. You were welcomed into the home.
But that's what I pled to. I had no idea. But look, I still was in the wrong.
Right.
And I just didn't understand, right? And so here I pled to this violent felony, which later enhanced me to do more time in prison and a higher level of prison, right? Because they considered me a violent felon. And, so there was a lot of people in prison, and since then, that law has changed, and they've let a lot of people out that were doing a lot of years for crack cocaine and guns. They've realized that crack law was a bad law. I think it was so many more time. You got triple time. It was just insane.
Well, right, and I think Joe Biden was all over that.
I think he's the one who made the bill.
That's right.
I'm not like a super educated on who made what policies, but my understanding is he was the one who helped make that policy, and now that policy's gone, and I think it's right because, I have 3 first cousins that have died from fentanyl and before they were 25, 30 years old in the last 10 years, right?
I'm so sorry to hear that.
So,
that
like, my family, I have drug addiction, I have alcohol addiction, I have mental illness that runs rampant in my family. And I'm very fortunate that, I've made it out. I was never supposed to be here. And, I'm here. And
the odds of that, I think if we go back to when you're a 10-year-old getting in trouble with the system in Detroit, I think the odds of you being here where you are now, one of the most successful businessmen in the state of Colorado, I would say, are very low, very low,
very low. And I'm grateful for it. I owe sobriety, I owe my mentors, I owe God, I owe my children, I owe my ex-wife. I owe a lot of people a lot of gratitude for where I'm at because I didn't do it on my own. A lot of people, anybody that sits on a stage and says that they're there because of what they did, they don't realize that they're not there alone. And I realized that I didn't do this by myself.
Took a lot of collaboration and a lot of mutually beneficial relationships.
Correct.
Sounds like.
Yeah, and a lot of hard work. It took a lot of hard work and a lot of dedication and, a lot of like house cleaning, a lot of taking accountability and responsibility for the things I did, because I did break the law. I did make bad choices. I was an alcoholic and a drug addict, right? I was these things, and I can't take that away. All I can do is move past it. And I'm lucky enough that my kids are old enough, and they've Googled me, and unfortunately, you can't get rid of what Google says about you. Some of it's true, and some of it's not. And it's everything in life, right? I teach my kids, when you Google something, you make sure you read 3 or 4 different sources and make your own opinion, because it's not always right.
That's right. You have to do your own due diligence on information these days. It's readily available from all sorts of sources, but you have to double, triple, quadruple check it and
make
put it
your
in the
own,
context,
right? And make your own your own mind up about what is false and what is true.
So your children, they Google this stuff. They know your past, but they must be very proud of who you've become. Do they understand the story for what it is?
They're starting to. I mean, they're 10, 13, and 14, right? They go to Catholic school. They live in very nice houses, and they go to private school, and they don't really understand what me and their mom had to go through, because my ex-wife had a very rough past too. And we moved on, and we've been divorced, but we co-parent together, and we don't always see eye to eye every day, but we've been doing a good job of raising our kids, right? It's been tough on our kids to have divorced parents, but I feel like we've done a really good job of raising our kids and putting the right beliefs in them, having them go to Catholic school, having them understand that there's more to life.
Their mom, your ex-wife, is Jewish, correct?
Her mother was Jewish and her father is Catholic.
Okay, so she grew up what they call a cashew, I guess.
Yes, and my kids, my God bless my mother-in-law, bless her soul, she passed away, and it was rough to watch my ex-wife go through that, as my ex-wife went through it with me. I didn't tell you this, but in 2009, I was a year out of prison. My mom and stepdad lost their job at General Motors. They shut down General Motors. I'm doing roughly 100 roofs a week, me and my partner, and things are just going great. And, I got a call that morning that my stepdad came home from losing his job and killed my mother and then himself.
I'm so sorry.
My mother was 52 years old. And, that was tough, right? And, I have a brother who has a disability, has a brain injury, and his doctors explained to me that I couldn't bury my mother and stepfather apart. I didn't want to bury this man with my mother who killed my mother, but I had to have their funeral together. Otherwise,
who said
my brother's doctors, he has a brain injury,
right? And
he lived in the house for 2 days with them while they were dead in the room. And he couldn't process what was going on because of his brain injury.
Sure.
So me being the oldest, I had to make a decision that I was going to bury my mother and the man that killed her together and have their funeral together. It was, and a lot of one of my current partners, Danny, a lot of my friends showed up there, right, and kept me sane, and kept me sober and got me through that part of my life. But that was a very hard moment in my sobriety and my business. I had to, I was newly married. I just started dating my wife. I wasn't married yet. I had to make some tough choices, right? Here I am year out of prison, and, my mother just got murdered. And I had to bury her with the guy that murdered her, because otherwise my brother wouldn't have been able to process it. I still, that still haunts me, right? Like,
yeah, that's got to be tough.
Did I do the right thing did I not, because he loved my mother, right? This man loved my mother. He
Sure.
bought my mother flowers. I never, ever, he was my best friend. I never heard him yell at my mother. We were very close.
So you had to make a very tough decision out of love for him.
Yeah.
That were that way heavier than some other considerations.
And some of my family to this day don't forgive me for the decisions I made. And, you know, that's the thing about being a boss or being in a position of power in life. You got to make decisions that not everybody will agree with, but you got to make what's the right decision for the people that matter.
Well, let me ask you about that because first of all, your story is very inspirational in that you have become a different person, a better person, a more disciplined person. But what is it like to go, whether you win the lottery or I don't know, you know, you didn't, you've earned all of this. But what is it like to go from rags to riches to where you can if you wanted to get around on a private jet, you could. Yeah, but you don't. You don't live a lavish, opulent lifestyle. You live the one that you want to live. But what's that like?
You know, sometimes I have to pinch myself. You know, sometimes I don't realize where I am in life. And there's nobody harder on yourself than yourself. I am my driving force, right?
Mm-hmm.
I am harder on me than anyone ever could be. I am demanding more out of me than anyone else could. And you know, sometimes it's not enough, right? And it's not the money I do it for. It's just I don't know what else to do. You know, I'm a part of this massive organization, this private equity group. And man, it's so nice. We all get along and we all are on the same trajectory, right? Now, we don't always agree on everything, but we work everything out. And it's nice because we're all sober. We're all in this together. And it's tough, right? Because you're always comparing yourself to like me. I compare myself to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess one day I'll find out what it's like to do what I want, but I just haven't. You know, and maybe that's part of my discipline.
You're not exercising the I can go do any damn thing I want to do that we all dream of, right? Everybody dreams of being able to do that someday.
Yeah, maybe out of fear, maybe out of you know, I do well in structure.
Yeah.
You know,
You're more comfortable there.
Yeah, I still freak out that I have 3 college educations I have to pay for. I'm about to be 52 with a 10-year-old.
Right. You take your children around the world. I mean, I watch you on Facebook a lot. You're traveling with the children. They get to do anything.
Yeah, I feel that, you know, that's one of the things that I really do with my kids is experiences. I try not to buy them what they want, and I try to do things with them, right? The things that I never got to do, I try to do with my kids.
No, I've noticed that because every time I've ever wanted to do anything with you, you're talking about, well, I have an appointment with my son to go to this game over here. And, you know, you're always talking about what you're going to be doing with your kids. I think that's fantastic. Those are some very fortunate kids to have a dad like you.
Yeah, I'm fortunate to have such great kids.
Yeah. Well, God blesses us in many ways. Children are the greatest. But let me ask you, because I know that there are a lot of people, I hope that there will be a lot of people out there listening to this show who are whatever stage they are in life, but I'm particularly thinking about people who are in their 20s. Maybe they've gone to college, whatever it is they have done to try to prepare themselves for life, and they've fallen into drugs, alcohol, whatever it may be. A lot of people have been down in the doldrums, and they just don't see a way out. They don't know how they're going to pay their next mortgage or rent, even though they've pretty much done things right. And they're sort of wallowing in despair. You've been there. You've been in a prison cell wallowing in despair. What advice do you have for someone like that?
I mean, just don't be a victim. Take accountability. Look, the only one going to get you out of the mess you're in is yourself. Wake up in the morning and do the best you can do all day long. And go to bed knowing that I did everything I could do right that day, right? And do the same thing tomorrow. And I put enough of them days together that they turned into weeks, that they turned into months, that they turned into years. And here I am. And it's just, I had to know that there was no magic carpet going to come pick me up and change my life. I had to do the work.
Well, and somebody could sit here and say, well, that sounds nice, but look at you now. You're a successful businessman with a great big corporation that you've built corporations and merged, and you've done all of this. But it's not going that way for them. But you had that attitude of get up and get going when you're in a prison cell.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, you want to talk about being stuck. That's being stuck.
Yeah. And I had thousands of doors shut in my face. I got, sprayed with a water hose. I got, I got police called on me. I got, guns pulled on me.
Did you want to give up?
I don't know that a day went by that I really wanted to go knock on a door and ask somebody if they wanted a roof. Mm-hmm. But I knew it was better than the alternative of staying on that air mattress in that studio apartment with 3 other men.
Did you get angry with God sometimes about the way that, look, it's not fair. I'm in prison because I bought a gun.
Of course.
I didn't hurt anyone with the gun.
Of course I was angry. I mean, I was angry all up until that day that I took accountability and responsibility when I walked in that cell, in the Timothy McVeigh cell. When I walked into that cell and I seen that day changed my life. That day is the day that I realized that I have to change. I have to accept what I did. I have to change who I am, and I have to move forward.
Because that was rock bottom, wasn't it?
Yeah, don't get much rock bottom more than that.
No, I wouldn't think so.
I mean, but of course, right? Look, I had to bury my parents. I was in a car accident in a coma. I had all these different things that have happened in my life, right? I'd been shot at, I've been stabbed, I've been all these different things in my life.
I mean, you want to find things to complain about and tell people you've had a raw deal.
Yeah.
It seems like you've got enough material.
I mean, I could sit here for
loads
days.
Of material.
I could sit here for days and tell you all the bad things, but what I can tell you is all them bad things made me who I am today. And I learned from them, and I moved on, and I stopped being the victim.
And you must be pretty happy with the way things are today.
I wish I could say I was, right? Like I said, I'm my biggest critic. Mm-hmm. I still am hard on myself, right? I still expect more out of myself. I still expect me to be better and do more.
So you've sold you've merged your company with other companies.
Right. I still am a big shareholder.
But
yes.
you're still building your career in the roofing business.
Oh yeah, we're building to take on maybe another equity partner. Right. I'm still a shareholder, and I'm still very involved, and I'm having a lot of fun. Yeah. We're in multiple states right now. We have 5 different brands. We have Interstate Roofing. We have Pro West. We have Danny Boy Roofing. We have A1 and 5 stars. We're all the way from the East Coast to Phoenix. We're Carolinas, Atlanta, Florida, Chicago, Illinois, Minnesota, Phoenix, Denver, Utah, Kansas City, New Mexico. I probably forgetting some states, but
sure.
We're and look, you can't do this on your own. And I'm doing this with people I like. We're building this great platform of this roofing business with friends and people that I like. And I'm watching everybody, make a good living and do well for themselves. And, if anybody wants to follow me, I'm on Instagram. It's big_Scott303. If you want to follow me on Instagram and watch my journey, I used to not post as much as I do now because I feel like, look, I don't post to brag. I post to let everybody know there's hope. I post to let
I've never taken it as whenever I've seen you post, and I follow you on Facebook more than anything else because I'm a boomer, I guess.
Yeah.
Barely a boomer. But anyway, I follow you on Facebook. I've never seen it as bragging or anything of the sort. But it is very inspirational.
Right. And,
I
and
love
it's
to
hard.
see someone who spends as much time with his kids as you do and has the ability to do that.
Right. And and I'm fortunate that I get to do the things. And that's one of the things that private equity has done for me. It's given me some freedom. It's given me qualified partners to help me do the things I need to do.
Great.
And mentors, right? And like, look, there's only so much you can learn about roofing. But I'm learning more, with my equity partners, I'm learning about, the way money in, money out. I'm learning all the business things that I never really learned as a young businessman.
I think a lot of people are out there working jobs and they're just in this endless cycle of never get ahead, and they're always sweating the rent and the mortgage or whatever. Roofing is a particularly good way to go for someone who's just looking to get into something and they really don't know where to go. Is that correct?
Correct. And it's not easy though, right?
No,
So,
I wouldn't think.
I mean, I used to have
I don't know I wouldn't know how to begin.
I used to have on my mirror, it used to say, "I'm Scott Riopelle. I started with nothing. If I lose everything today, I'm back to even." What do I have to lose? If I lose it, I'm back to even because I was broke when I started.
And you have lost it.
And I've got it back, thank God.
And you're always going to get it back, I would think. As
know,
long as you have a pulse.
I hope so. I hope so. That's, I'm a risk taker, and not everybody's a risk taker. And to get ahead in life, I had to take risks, right? And it wasn't always, I was homeless. I did live under a bridge. I did live in crack houses. I did live on an air mattress. I didn't have a car, and I sold roofs, and I had every excuse in the world not to sell a roof because I had no idea about selling roofs or what I was doing or knocking on a door, and it was tough. But guess what? I got up and I did it every day.
Just did it. Went through the motions.
Yeah.
My mom always used to say 90% of life is just showing up.
Yeah, and not everybody can do that, right? Not everybody's
Right.
disciplined enough to do it. Yeah. And if you are disciplined enough to do it, look us up. Come join us. We'd love to bring you on and teach you a way of life that changed my life.
One thing before we end here, I'd like to ask you about is, as a father, I have 6 children, as you know. I know a lot of parents out there, a lot of people out there. One of the things that keeps them up at night is their roof. Believe it or not, that's one of the scariest things in the world. Is what if a hailstorm comes along and I've got a $30,000-$40,000 problem the next morning? I'm not really prepared to contend with right now. And then, of course, all of the roofers start showing up because they chase hailstorms from your level and on down.
Yes.
Tell me what do you do if you wake up one morning and your roof is gone?
Do your due diligence. It's not bad to use somebody that knocks on your door, but don't use the first person that knocks on your door. Do your research and do multiple researches. Call the Better Business Bureau. Don't only look online. Call their references. Check online how long they've had their license. Make sure that they have workers' comp and liability and that they've been in business, more than 5 years, 10 years, because, you have to make sure that you trust the person that you're using and that they're going to do a good job.
Well, and you were that guy at one point who was knocking on doors, and you probably didn't have all of that structure behind you.
Nope. And I'm one of the guys that got lucky, right? That I was able to have the mentors to teach me how to do it the right way.
Scott, you are a real inspiration to me, and I know others, and I really appreciate you making time to come visit with us about this today, and thank you so much. You are a true inspiration, and congratulations on all your success in life, both in business and in your family.
Thanks, Wayne.
Thank you.
All right, you have a good one.
You too.
Appreciate it.
Take care.